What's going on? What's going on? What's going on with these people? Hey y'all, it's your captain for all things creative coming at you with the Love is Blind Season 9, Episode 1 through 6 review. That's going to be organized by the way I rank the couples from the most problematic and my least favorite to, I guess, the least problematic and my most favorite, even though it's hard to have favorites this season. It's really a time that we're all having in this country, and it's reflected in the show because these people are really trying to hold it together, but not very well. But at least they're distracting us a little bit and entertaining us. So let us get into just the nitty gritty of like the business of the channel. If you are new and not subscribed, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff because it helps. If you're returning, thank you for rocking with us. Now let's get into the reflection time. Now I know y'all are used to me, you know, going into the channel business and then getting into the reviews, but because of the situation right now, in the world and in America, where, you know, it's a little hard to even read the news a lot of the time. So I know as a mom, especially, I try to shield my toddler, from things, but then I will privately, try to look around, see what I can find. And of course, as an educator and as a Christian who, went to different higher education institutions, I was always taught, you wake up with the Bible and the newspaper. And, newspapers, they're not as in fashion anymore because, we have our phones and all the digital stuff. But Bible still can be a great source of inspiration for some people. I know there are different sacred texts that people have, but the verse that really was placed on my heart, while I was, preparing to record was this from 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. So I just want to read it and then kind of like work through a little bit of my feelings and set like a positive tone for the video before we get into, like the Love is Blind review. So the scriptures for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of self-control. Some translations say power and love and a sound mind. And love obviously relates to Love is Blind directly, but the other parts, speaking out against fear, and reclaiming God-given power, because all of us, when we're born, we're given free will and the ability to act, and that's what power is. And then whether you, think the scripture talks about self-control or a sound mind, really we all have the ability to think and, have a mind and a soul, and ways that we try to understand our world, so especially in all these times, whether, you're in a bubble or like in a media break, like I go on sometimes, or, if you're just binging nonsense TV like Love is Blind, like I do sometimes as well when, I need to decompress. I definitely want to remind people that there's a season for everything. There's a season and a time where, you're supposed to sit back and grieve and, process your feelings. Always do self-care. Listen to your body, listen to your mind, but please don't ever bury your head in the sand about, your life. And that's what a lot of these people on Love is Blind is doing. They're burying their heads in the sand, ignoring red flags and their partners. And I would say the same things about, situations in your life, and also situations, when you see signs of the times that are looking not good. Please don't bury your head in the sand. Definitely take your time to collect yourself. Have your sound mind and the power that God gave you to face whatever reality you need to, and do what's best for you and your family, whether that is, to relocate, to get out of a situation, or if God places in your heart, or your spirit tells you that you are strong enough, to do something, whatever's in your power to do, whether it's just donating money, or if you don't have money and you ran out of M's to give, you willing to put your body, in the game, put some skin in it, and do whatever you want to do physically. I know I'm a body kinesthetic kind of person, so sometimes I do want to, get down in whatever situation. Like, I was an athlete. I have, in the past loved, just showing up, taking risks. Like, I had a time where I even went and gone to other countries. Like, I was a missionary in Japan for a little bit, Um, and when I was there, I I thought at first, it would be fun to, put everything on the line, put my whole life on hold, in America, and just, live solely for God. And I, was in a contract where, I had to teach as well as, preach and do, those kind of ministry things. And it was a time where I started off being very happy, like, because I'm an anime fan, so it was a very big dream of mine, so go to Japan. And I was living there. I enjoyed all the food, the ramen, all that stuff. And I realized that problems exist everywhere, because I think I had little rose-colored glasses about things. I was like, oh, I'll be around Christians, but you know, there were also other Americans. There are also people with flaws. So even when I was in Japan, I still had to deal with Americans who might have been racist or problematic. I still had to deal with also my own kind of homesickness, because as fun as it was at times, I did end up really getting really homesick and missing my family. And just like that was Japan summers are like really hot. Like, I got a whole heat stroke. I ended up at the hospital, need an IV, all kind of stuff like that. Like, them Olympic athletes in the summer games, like Simone Biles, like those strongest, physically fit young people, was passing out and getting their, competitions that, they signed up for, becoming too hard and too demanding for them, because them Japanese summers are no joke, So eventually, even though I had wanted to stay longer, I came back to America, and really it taught me, that like you can't run from problems, even a place you idealize it and places that you think you can go. People are still people. No place is perfect, no country is perfect, no people is perfect. But at the end of the day, you still need peace within. And, for me, prayer, meditation, all that helps. And I've managed to, build a beautiful life. I have a son, my husband, great family. And even so, just because something is good and beautiful doesn't mean it's perfect. So always taking that mandate, of the Bible or scripture, even just like the growth mindset to try to do better, try to, accept the things you cannot change, use the strength to change you things you can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. That's a serenity prayer. Like, I really hope people, again, think long and hard about what is best for you. Think about, again, accepting certain things that you can handle, that is okay for you and your life and your family. But of course, gather the strength in yourself to do whatever you need to do to change your situation. Whether it's removing yourself from situation, whether, again, it's fighting, whether it's, I don't know, finding a new hobby internally. But please pray about all of that you have to do. And of course, wisdom. Keeping your eyes open, keeping your heart open, going with your gut feeling, going with God. And with that, I would say again, we don't have the spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. Ashe, amen. And whether you believe in Hashem, Yahweh, God, Jehovah, whatever you call that higher power, draw from that in these times that, are stressful and trying, especially as you read through the news, but know through it all you still have power. You still have love. Love yourself, love your people around you, and take care of yourself and be smart. And don't bury your head in the sand and do what you need to do. All right. So, back to our regularly scheduled program. Review and ranking time. Okay, so least favorite couple, bottom of the list, has to go to Casey and Patrick. These two were both problematic in different ways, but at least they didn't make it out the pods, even though Casey was scamming Patrick to the very end. So Casey's clearly a scammer for this show. She's too caught up in looks by her own admission, since she basically says she went for her quote-unquote ex after just seeing pictures on Instagram, not knowing the person. And even after he basically said he's willing to pimp her out, she was still talking about him and willing to stay with him. So she has a picker that is off. And definitely, we know we don't know these people, but given the fact that she was faking it with Patrick and definitely stopped liking him once she saw how he looked, it's clear to her and everybody else that love can be blind all day, but at the end of the day, the level of attractiveness that the person has is very important to her, at least by her actions on the show, right? And I definitely think she's going to go back to that ex because of how, she was talking about him. But Patrick is also problematic too because he knows that Casey is not the one for him. And he even called her out for sticking with that ex after she told the story of him saying, hey, you can go on love shows and, come back to me, whatever. And he also liked Anna best, we'll talk about a little later. But once Anna left the experiment, Patrick had a choice. He could have either, continued with the process knowing that his heart really wasn't in it anymore because his heart was with Anna, or he was going to try to pivot and try to scrape up a connection out of somewhere. And I think for Patrick, he wanted to leave with something, so he did not love himself enough to choose to, go with his gut and his real feelings about Casey, because he had doubts about Casey all along, but he let himself believe Casey's lies once he got a little desperate when Anna left. And he has a lot of self-hate also. Again, we don't know him personally, but the things he was saying on the show definitely suggest that he has a lot of internalized racism about BH, saying stuff like, I do all the stuff that white people do, why can't people like me? And it's a little bit of a issue of him, I think, putting Casey on a pedestal because she's white as well. Because once he saw how she looked, he could not get that halo effect out of his mind. Even when she was breaking up with him and telling him, I don't want to see you, no, he still was choosing to believe the good and that they would be good for each other. They could still meet up outside Denver. And she was like, no, I don't even know how you're going to get my number because I'm not giving it to you. And he still was not reading the sign. Now, to be fair to him, Casey was diabolical for the way she used her body and the promise of sex, kind of like a carrot that she was dangling in front of him. Even when she was breaking up with him, she made sure, to straddle him and jump on him and kiss him and stuff to confuse that man. So even though Casey was definitely doing confusing things, Patrick should have known that she was not trying to be with him when she kept making them excuses, talking about how, it's the cameras and no, I don't think we can meet, and how you gonna get my number? Like, y'all are engaged. What do you mean you're not gonna give him your number? Like, he definitely got I guess hypnotized by her desirability, if not her whiteness. And I definitely think that Patrick was not feeling her for most of the experiment, but she turned, one of the conversations basically into like this lackluster phone sex session on him. And I think that's when he stopped thinking with his big brain, started thinking with his little brain, and it was downhill from there. And I definitely am glad that Casey admitted that she couldn't keep faking any longer with this man. And I hope that Patrick will learn to love himself, because I understand how pervasive European beauty standards are. And even lately, eugenics talk is making a comeback. Even on Love Island games, that Lucinda girl was talking about how she got good genes, and everybody knows about the infamous Sydney Sweeney ass talking about she got good genes too. So, yes, that rhetoric and that mindset is around. And there's also that other problematic trend of people like fetishizing Asian people. But at the end of the day, Patrick has to learn to love himself, period. And all around the world, especially after all these K-pop artists and J-pop stars and Chinese Marvel heroes are making the masses, see the beauty of Asian people in like a big way. It's not impossible to find someone who appreciates an Asian man like Patrick, and there are people who will want him because of his race and not in spite of it. So at the end of the day, Patrick has to learn to go with his heart and his gut a little bit more. Stop thinking with the little head instead of the big head, and definitely stop hating on himself. The next couple I hated the most was Andy and Nick. Oh my gosh. Now these two even called themselves twins when they were on their vacation talking about twin. Where have you been? And it's like a match made in hell with these two, because at the end of the day, they were espousing similar kind of like closed-minded kind of views, and they probably will get along just fine until Annie sees that Nick is lying on this pathological level, because she's worried about her imaginary children potentially going through what she and Nick said would be the fad of being gay. But Nick has been lying since he got in the pod, from saying that he didn't know that Kate girl wasn't interested in a relationship with God, to lying about Kate coming at him sideways with daggers. And then he even lied on his own mom about some incident in the past where he claims that he was at home sad and his mom asked him if he was gay because he was sad. Now, I'm a boy mom, and I know that story did not happen the way Nick told it. And when I tell you a lie, don't care who tell it, because there's no way that his Christian mom with good sense and the Holy Ghost asked him if he was gay just because he looked sad. Nick is definitely not telling that whole story, because from his own accounts in the pods, he has some kind of group chat with his friends where they be talking about each other's man bits and things like that. So maybe his mom saw a chat like that, or his Grindr app or something like that, because it ain't no way that was the full story, especially in this day and age of the internet and chat GPT and all these things. Nick is not telling the full story, and he keep lying. And I really think also telling Annie that story about how normal it is for men to text each other about their private parts is him grooming Annie to get used to him, talking to men inappropriately. He kind of gives me like an Eddie Long kind of tea, where he wants to keep the facade of being, a homophobic Christian man. Because Eddie Long, he's a famous pastor in Atlanta who passed away, but he used to have like literal parades that were anti-gay. This time he was running through a lot of boys in Atlanta, and the way Nick was carrying on definitely was giving that kind of vibe, if not Andrew Caldwell delivered kind of vibe. And I felt that way, especially because he's talking about being conservative and Christian, but then he was being like overtly sexual with his talks to Annie, talking about, oh, is the carpet wet under you? It's like there's a disconnect. He's lying too much about everything. Even the way he flirted was coming off disingenuous and overly sexual, like he was overcompensating kind of. And the only time I believed him when he was flirting was actually when he was talking to Mike when he basically said that, Mike was gonna be, so attractive to Megan or Sparkle Megan to the point that she would need her EpiPen when she saw him. And the way he was looking at Mike like he was a whole steak dinner, that was the most real that Nick looked about attraction than he ever looked with any of them women's in the pod. Talking about, is that carpet wet under you right now? It's like, stop it. So yeah, if Nick's mom is correct, Annie is in for a wild ride and a hard time untangling herself from the web that Nick is weaving, and it does not look that good for Annie because our Annie can't even clearly see that she needs to fire her hairstylist, and I really, really think that they will not make it to, the I do, but hey, anything can happen if Nick wants to really scam to the end. The next couple that's slightly better than Nick and Annie, but not, the best by far, is Joe and Madison. I kind of liked them at first because I guess they hadn't seen each other yet, but definitely when, Madison told Joe about her eye conditioner, you could tell that, Joe has some reservations. He's like, I'm processing it, but, it's not going to change how I feel about you. But what changed how he felt about her for sure was definitely seeing her. And he even admitted that, he usually likes smaller women. And during the vacation, he proceeded to ignore Madison in front of everybody. And he drank and drugged himself silly because I don't know what, he was saying and doing. To be fair to him, there are some people who wake up kind of in stages. Like, I have a sister, sometimes she'll have kind of these half-baked conversations with you when she's waking up, and she don't remember what she said because she was half asleep. And I think he might have been that way, but because Madison doesn't know him, it was very alarming for her to see him either that drunk or that messed up, or just that groggy and out of it from waking up. So because they don't know each other, that made the situation worse. And I think she's also kind of getting upset because she's processing the fact that he's just not that into her because of the way he treated her in front of everyone else. So again, things aren't looking good for them romantically, but I think at the very least these two can learn to respect each other, because I don't think either of them are trying to like deceive each other actively. Like, I think Nick is trying to deceive Andy, and Casey was definitely trying to deceive Patrick. But I do think that Joe is trying to work through the fact that he liked her without seeing her in the past, but he does not feel attraction. He's trying to grow it because I guess they're having relations. So that's not to say that the connection isn't, there at all, but you could tell he would prefer someone different by the way he kind of disrespects her. But at the end of the day, I do think the respect might be able to grow and they might be able to become friends, but I don't see them making it long term, especially because Madison is now in her head about everything. The next most problematic couple, probably the stars of the season for a lot of people, is Calabria and Edmund. Now, Edmund Buki, he is so unintentionally funny, and I definitely feel like the producers chose him to be entertainment in the pod because the pods are usually the most boring section. But the fact that somebody chose him is a little interesting because Calabria, she herself said she ignores the red flags, and you see her kind of ignoring or dismissing the things that are off about Edmund, and you could kind of see it as, okay, she's accepting him for who he is, but I really feel like there's a lot that Calabria is not seeing, either intentionally or just because she's so intent on, completing the process. Because just the fact that this is a man who says he eats his boogers, right? He shamelessly was sucking down on her toes in public, kind of embarrassingly, when they were on the vacation. When, they mentioned for first time he was running like Naruto and other anime ninjas with his hands behind his back, which, as an anime fan, I get, but that's something that might turn people off, if you're not into anime. And then he was kissing the flow. And even some of his homeboys, Brandon, was like, what are you doing? This is not okay for your immune system. And then the icing on the cake, which really should have made Calabria, take pause, was Edmund throwing a whole toddler tantrum because he was told that she wanted to wait just 4 weeks, till they got married before having relations. And the crying and all that, you could say he, was in touch with his emotion and endearing, but the crying because she told him no in terms of, consenting to sex and all that, that's manipulative. Like, and throw it in her face about the one night stands. I understand his point in some ways because it's a little bit of a disconnect if, she's saying, well, she wants to save herself from marriage with him even though they're engaged, but, she's having one night stands, so he doesn't understand the disconnect, between being able to, give herself away to people that don't care about her and she doesn't care for, when he's clearly expressing the fact that he cares for her and he wants to, test the goods before marriage. And if, you're a Christian, obviously premarital sex would be out the question. But I remember there was a Sex in the City episode with like Charlotte, kind of doing the fantasy of waiting until marriage, and she ended up with the guy with ED. And I think that's something that gets in a lot of people's head, this idea of like, needing to test drive the car, if you will, before marriage and wanting to make sure that the sexual connection is there. So I don't want to dismiss Edmund's tears because if they're not sexually compatible, that could be a real fear that he has. And there are people that, have suffered because they found out after the fact, they're not sexually compatible with the person that they married. But at the end of the day, no means no. It's Calabria's body, her choice. And if it's not consensual, why would you want it anyway? So it's just given red flag for sure that he, was crying about her not having sex. And not even initially, because like I guess they had that conversation before, but just the fact that everybody else on the honeymoon also had relations, and then he found out about her having one night stands, made him get upset all over again, even though he knew she had wanted to wait. So it seemed like at first he respected her decision, but then he decided to, have issue with the decision once he found out more information, which is not cool at the end of the day because he knew that that's what she wanted to do. And regardless of getting the new information, instead of like processing it in a healthy and adult way, he basically threw a tantrum and was crying. So again, it wasn't the first time that he heard that she wanted to wait for marriage, but he definitely, I think, was indignant about the fact that other men or people, had access to Calabria when he didn't. And then the pressure, I guess, of keeping up with the other people in the cast also got to him. And Calabria also called him out for, like, not comparing himself to others and saying, comparison is a thief of joy. But she was also comparing, herself. So Calabria sometimes speaks out of both sides of her mouth. And we have to pay attention also to her motives if she keeps on ignoring these red flags. And in this case, she's the one that reignited the conversation about, waiting until marriage. And Edmund, my bookie, I mean, I hope that, he can learn to read situations a little better and not, kiss the floor and all those other antics, but he's going to keep acting the way he is, and I wonder what's going to be the straw that breaks Calabria's back. So let's keep an eye out on these two. If, they make it, I would be very surprised. And I definitely think that Edmund's funniest moment was kind of when Brendan was crying and he was also crying. It's just like So funny. He's like, I can't even look at you without crying. Where it's like Brendan was trying to hold it together, when um I guess the other guy had gotten Annie, and I think Brendan would have appreciated if Edmund took him to the side or like gave him encouragement words, but Edmund could not hold it together and be the strength for Brandon. So it makes me wonder if he can be a strength for Calabria. And she asked him that as well in a number of different ways. So at the end of the day, I don't think they are compatible. But Edmund is TV gold. So I do want to see what Calabria sees in him still. All right, next top three: Sparkle, Megan, and Jordan. So it seems like Netflix wanted to make Sparkle Megan the star of the season, judging solely on how much screen time she got and how many options she had. But for me, the sparkle was not sparkling. I saw glitter, her glitter shoes. I know she has money, but at the end of the day, the thing that I admired most about Megan was not her star power or even her bling or whatever makes her friends call her Sparkle Megan. But I think I admire her guts the most because her gut feeling seemed to be right about Mike according to the streets. So allegedly, according to legal documents and the report broken by Storytime with Ricky, you can check her out for like the details. Mike has a long list of workers and companies to which he owes money. So it seems like Megan dodged a bullet in the sense of not choosing the financial scammer and going with Jordan. However, Jordan's vasectomy and the way he talks about it makes him seem like a promiscuous kind of guy who may not want to have more kids for real, for real. And even the way he talked about adoption, it's like I feel like something is up with that story of how he became a father in the first place, and it gave him a lot of trust issues and a lot of hesitance about having kids, which is why he got the surgery. But we don't know these people, we don't know for sure. But at the end of the day, Megan is ignoring certain things about Jordan, partly because of her father having diabetes, and I feel like she's really feeling like Luca or Jordan's son having diabetes too is like a sign from her father, or maybe like it's a chance for her to like stay connected to her father. But there's something about, you know, the way she's processing the fact that she's going to be a stepmom that's off because of what happened with her father. And I think Megan's journey is going to be really about fully clocking the fact that Luca has a mom, right? And so there's going to be some kind of baby mama drama with Jordan, and she has to learn how to respectfully navigate coming into this child's life and respecting whatever co-parenting agreement that Jordan has with Luca's mom, because she acting like she's just gonna come in full time and take over, at least the way she's talking, so we gotta, you know, give Megan the benefit of the doubt that she's gonna figure it out. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like it's clocking to her, all the drama that will be involved in, being with somebody like Jordan. And I guess the other thing that was an issue was Megan kind of saying that she has a donk, or Jordan initially saying that he thinks she has a donk, and then her, basically glorifying, the big butt BBL kind of aesthetic. And I just think it's so interesting how it's like that aesthetic on women of color is not as well received as it is on, someone like a Sparkle Megan. And because she's smaller in frame, it's okay for her to have that kind of, confidence in that. But someone like the Madison, who is more full figured, is over there with, Joe not appreciating her features. So it's always interesting how, like, qualities are acceptable on people who, like, fit the European beauty standards more closely than they are on people who don't. So that's like a whole other conversation. But at the end of the day, they seem to be enjoying each other and they're having relations and it seems to be good. So I knew they would be compatible there, but I need them to think through what life they're gonna have together. And you see in the preview that they don't get into the Lucas stuff, but they do talk about the financial disconnect because I think Megan wants like a $2 million house and Jordan does not want to be flashy because he's like a whole dad who's frugal, and that is going to be an issue because Mike probably was more financially compatible with Megan, so they're going to have to work a whole bunch of things out that they're not thinking about right now. Next couple that we like, and like the only actual couple left on the list, is Allie and Anton. I believe her name is Alini Fully, and I love her because she knows her worth, and I like him because he doesn't seem to be very problematic, and he's self-regulating and doing all the things that make me think that he can be an adult and bring his best self into this relationship right now. We didn't really see a lot of them in the pods because, like I said, Sparkle Megan and all her drama took up a lot of the time. But it seems like from the preview especially, and even from Allie's comments about the ring, he's not acknowledging, or it's not clocking to him that Alini knows her worth and wants to be treated like a princess, kind of, and I think he's trying to, also maintain his worth and not seem like he's fawning over, like a princess. That's kind of why he walked away and didn't look back at her. But at the end of the day, especially in the preview we saw about, him asking her if she don't clean or cook, whatever. And I liked how Allie stand on business. I was like, listen, do I look like a maid? No, I don't. Like, I am a princess to be treated as such. So them two are definitely going to clash about that. And to be honest, I'm a little bit on Allie's side with that because I have just like I guess, rebellious kind of streak in me that, makes me feel like, especially in a household, if you are, doing like all the cooking, you're also working because she's in the reserves as well. I did not sign up to be a slave. So some of that stuff, if it can be allocated and you can afford to, support the economy and hire someone to help, like, with like cleaning and whatnot, then that should be done and nobody should expect it to be everything. And each person should contribute equally because if Anton is not cleaning and expect her to just clean up after him, that's going to be a problem. So I need to see how that situation plays out. But overall, I do like that. And last but not least, even though they're not a couple, the top peer pair of this season are Anna and Blake. They're the runaways who saw the BS forest for the trees and got out while the going was good. Anna was clicking with basically everybody that she spoke to from what we saw. Blake was also popular because Sparkle Megan really wanted him, but I think it would be a gag if they made a scheme to run away together. From what I've seen online, I think Anna said her parents had been worried that she had been kidnapped or something, so she had to leave to clear that up to them. But at the end of the day, I remember Blake set up a really cute camping themed date for Anna. It was a very cute pod date. So if they ended up getting together, that'd be so cute. And also had a connection with Patrick, but both of them said that they don't really date other Asians. They into, interracial relationships or the swirl. So I think Anna and Blake are more suited. If they end up getting together, I would not be surprised. But they really were smart to get out because everybody else was tripping. They probably saw how other people were behaving in the pods and also got scared. Especially Blake seeing Edmund kiss the floor and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I'm glad that they got rid of themselves and chose themselves. And I think it's okay for the escapism and the entertainment of it all. But if a place does not serve you and your peace is not preserved, you need to leave. And I'm glad they did that. So I would advise that for people listening as well. Pay attention. Don't bury your head in the sand. Look around at the signs of the time. Do what's best for you. If it's leaving, you gotta leave. If you need to stay and fight for something, do that. But these two embody that. And please, for yourself in your own life too, please pray about it, meditate, think about what you need to do, and wake up. Remember, you're the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. Say how you felt about everything in the comments, and we'll talk more later. Bye.